Fat can't be converted to glucose.
It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. What you're saying is absolute bunk bullshit nonsense. A bunch of hoopla. What the are you talking about? No way. No way. Are you out of your mind? Well, it looks like Zane Griggs has started to go off the rails, basically, and start posting more anti-carnivore and anti-keto nonsense based on a bunch of flawed understanding of human physiology.
How could a very low-carb diet, so a low or no-carb diet, cause elevated blood sugar?
Okay, so elevated according to whom on the basis of what, Zane? Elevated according to whom on the basis of what? Okay, so elevated beyond what is considered, you know, abnormal and deleterious, contraindicated by now. If you haven't already, link in the description below for paperback, hardcover, ebook, and self-narrated audiobook editions, because I'm all about authenticity. By the mainstream medical institutions, based on a bunch of data from people that actually go to clinics. So a demographic of people, high respondent bias. That's what that is. People that are sick, right? So elevated beyond that range, right? But also, even if you could actually inform upon whether that level were deleterious in that person based on a composite fructosamine assay, reticulocyte production rate, HbA1c value, and fasting blood glucose level, because all of that matters. Context matters. There are ways that you can cause it, primarily by overeating what seems to be protein, actually. And what's the best way to overeat on protein? Combining it with a bunch of carbohydrates, combining it with sweetener somehow, or combining it with a shitload of cheese and dairy, by the way. So that can cause it. Is that appropriate? No, it isn't. So, cool.
So elevated fasting blood sugar, elevated A1C.
Okay, so the A1C is extremely ambiguous, Zane. That is influenced by rate of red blood cell production, the rate of red blood cell death, so the frequency at which they live, and the length at which they live. It's influenced by since it's an average blood glucose reading over the course of 2 to 4 months, that can actually be elevated even when you're not having a bunch of spikes, but you just have higher baseline, which isn't necessarily implicated to be a problem. It's the spiking and troughing rapidly that is highly associated with pathology, that being diabetes. Okay, Zane?
Low thyroid.
Low thyroid according to whom on the basis of what? So we already covered the blood test thing. Hippocratic Oath, Zane. What you need to understand is the Hippocratic Oath. If a patient is not presenting with any symptoms and also has no identifiable disease process, you are obligated to not intervene in those circumstances, and you have no evidence to suggest that there was a problem. It is based on symptoms. If the person has low thyroid numbers, which also, again, ambiguous, because you have to look at the thyroid numbers in context. If you have high TSH, low T3, that's indicative perhaps of a problem. If you have low TSH and low T3, not exactly indicative. But even then, both of those situations, you need to combine that with, does the patient have symptoms or not? Because if they don't, leave them alone. Stop saying they have a problem. Okay? Stop it. You are doing harm. That's why it's part of the Hippocratic Oath, what I just said. Do no harm. You're doing harm if you intervene whenever there's no evidence of a problem. Okay? So, according to whom on the basis of what? If you're actually talking about people that are symptomatic with low thyroid, so feeling cold all the time, lack of an ability to hold on to and or build more muscle. Okay, perhaps weight stalling, weight gain even in the form of fat. Okay, those are all indicative of low metabolic rate, but if they actually have those problems, that is a sign of low insulin, too low of insulin. So you're not getting enough insulin activity, insulinogenic activity, to maintain baseline anabolic processes in the body that are required to be maintained for survival, such as electrolyte maintenance, thyroid hormone production and function. Those are really the two main things that are dependent strictly on the absolute level of insulin, not the I to G ratio, by the way, the insulin to glucagon ratio. You know what that's a sign of, therefore? You're under eating. If you're someone that has a problem, ostensibly, consuming enough food on carnivore, you think you might be one of these people, which includes, oftentimes we reduce it to protein, but maybe it's just food in general, too low of protein, too low of fat as well. I would suggest if you are someone that eats ground beef, ground meat in general, minced meat, cut it out. I can double the amount of protein I can eat in one meal if I don't have ground beef. consider that.
And even for some people, that leading to weight gain, fat gain.
Okay, so I already covered that. Weight gain and fat gain. Good distinction there, Zane, by the way, because weight is made up of a lot of things, and so you want to be very specific. So good. Fat gain can also be caused by overeating food, and I already just covered it. Because it is mass in, mass out. Mass has to come from somewhere when you're gaining weight. It has to come from somewhere. It starts with introduction of food into the body. Okay? That's why people will say, well, it has to be calories in, calories out. It has to be, necessarily. No, not necessarily, because calories is the wrong unit. It's not to say that we're defying the laws of physics by saying that you can just create mass and gain weight out of nowhere. That's not the point. There's multiple factors there that are subsidiary to the mass intake. And it's not calorie intake, it's mass intake. So, anyway, a little tangential. But I already covered that. You can also have weight gain, by the way, Zane, if you have too low of insulin, and you can actually be under eating and it can cause weight gain. Oddly enough, because if you are not matching it with metabolic rate, well, that's a problem, isn't it? You can have too low of a metabolic rate. Oops. So you have less metabolic activity, so you're probably going to be storing onto more of the food in the form of fat. Okay, so yes, right? So what are some ways to fix that? Stop under eating and or start engaging in more resistance training. Because whenever you put on muscle, you increase your metabolic rate because you have more oxidative tissue on the body. More mitochondria to feed. So,
particularly around the middle, but in general, weight gain or fat or gain of fat. Doesn't make sense, does it? You're not eating carbs. How could you make fat?
Well, we already covered that because you can still stimulate insulin without carbohydrates, and you can also stimulate a lot of glucose production at the level of the liver without carbohydrates. So we already covered that.
You have elevated blood sugar.
Elevated according to whom on the basis of what?
Why would you have low thyroid?
According to whom on the basis of what?
And yet, we see this over and over again.
No, we don't see it over and over again. You might see it over and over again. I don't see it over and over again. In fact, I see the exact opposite happening with people that are adopting a species-appropriate, species-specific diet and lifestyle. A lifestyle congruous with what our genes most evolved to genotypically withstand across our genome, according to the Darwinian principles of evolution and the subsequent principles of indication. Further, according to the hard scientific inferences from paleoanthropology, observational and chemical, elements of our biochemistry and comparative anatomy. And also basic common sense. And I don't even mean that in a flippant way. I mean, go out in the wild and tell me, if we're not designed to eat grass and twigs, okay, where are you going to find simple carbohydrates? What is your alternative fuel source? What is your alternative fuel source? You going to eat that bush of berries? Good luck. No, fruit season was where we acquired simple carbohydrates, and the very, very ephemeral instance of encountering a beehive. Honey. We weren't extracting maple syrup either, Paul Saladino. Weren't doing that. He may have laid off on that, by the way. I just remembered that from a long time ago. So forgive me if that was strictly in the past.
Wouldn't have been able to explain it until I started struggling with the low thyroid or the stress thyroid.
Well, okay, so why are you saying you had low thyroid? Did you have symptoms? Because if that's the case, then we can actually start addressing the problem. Because there's actually an identified problem. Okay? Also, do you live like the average person, or do you engage in lots of resistance training, Zane? Which would change your requirements. You advocated for a low-carb carnivorous approach for over 20 years. And then you started having a problem. And you think it took 20 years to develop a problem that was it was the effect of carnivore. It's going to cause these issues. You really think that, Zane?
The elevated blood sugar.
Elevated according to whom on the basis of what? Blah, 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 blah.
Myself and dug deeper into what's really going on. The
biochemistry. He's about to say biochemistry. Yes, the biochemistry. Something that I don't know anything about. Right. Something that something that I haven't studied for years on end, and am actively building an entire course regarding in my program. Look forward to that when it's out. It might take a year, but it will be worth it. It'll be well worth the wait. Tell us all about biochemistry, Zane.
Chemistry, because it's not super clear. We've been told, right?
It is pretty clear, actually, as to how it can cause that, how it may cause that.
Been taught, oh, it's all about elevated blood sugar. So we got to reduce blood sugar, which because that
Uh-huh.
stimulates insulin, and insulin is
Well, yes, but also other things stimulate insulin. You can stimulate insulin without the presence of elevation in blood glucose, by the way. Did you know that?
just a horrible, horrible hormone, which is causing.
No, who the hell said it was a horrible hormone, Zane? It's not a horrible hormone. It's a hormone. If the body produces it, it's not horrible. That's like saying LDL is horrible. The body produces it. That's Zane. No one's saying it's a horrible hormone. What we say is that the amount of insulin that is actually present in people's bodies nowadays and the frequency to which it is actually being spiked is way too incongruous with what our genes evolved to genotypically withstand. It's conducive to causing obesity and fat gain. Okay? Obesity itself is often, it really is a symptom. However, you can also consider it a disease because it still restricts movement. It shares many properties with diseases. It's really a disease and a symptom. Okay, but nevertheless, yes, the most conducive way of doing that is to be consuming a species-appropriate, species-specific diet. Because do you think that a species is designed to be fat and have restricted movement? No.
Fat and all sorts of disease, right? And leads to diabetes.
Well, fat itself is not the root cause of diabetes. Or at least being fat, rather. That's not the root cause of diabetes. The root cause is what got you fat. Okay?
And as I dug deeper, I realized it was not the blood sugar, it's not the insulin at all.
No, it is the insulin because the prototypical anabolic hormone is insulin. It is involved in fatty acid synthesis, triglyceride synthesis, glycogenesis. Okay? It's involved in all these processes. It's involved in glycolysis, even. Okay? Muscle protein synthesis. It is the overarching regulator of these things. It is not the be-all, end-all. It's not the dictator of fuel use, as other people in the space would like to say. But it is very influential because if you understand the difference between allosteric and hormonal regulation, you'll understand that hormones are involved in phosphorylation reactions, which covalently change the structure of enzymes responsible for said pathways, making them more influential per mole compared to allosteric regulators like citrate and acetyl-CoA and long-chain fatty acyl-CoAs. See, this is all biochemistry, Zane, something I know very familiar, like the back of my hand.
That's causing insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance is not a pathology, Zane. That is nonsense. Insulin resistance is what the body ought to be doing given the circumstances. Irrespective of whether it's pathological insulin resistance, not pathological, or peripheral/physiological insulin resistance. Not pathological. The pathology is chronically elevated blood glucose, and the root cause of that pathology is external because the root cause of all disease is external with very, very, very minimal exceptions, which involve like serious genetic problems like sickle cell.
It's not causing diabetes, obesity.
Diabetes type 2 is characterized, well, all diabetes is characterized as chronically elevated blood glucose and nothing else, and type 2 diabetes is externally caused by your diet, Zane. It must be. It is caused by lifestyle.
It's just another symptom.
Oh, for f***'s sake. Does that exclude it from being a subsequent cause of something else, by the way, Zane? First of all, as we just covered with obesity, obesity can subsequently cause further issues, with it also being a symptom.
It's another symptom, just like obesity, diabetes, and heart disease.
Okay, so you have that right, which is basically, they're all symptoms of something external. Good, great. So you're on the right track there.
The blood sugar is not the problem.
No, the blood sugar is a problem because glucose is a aldohexose. It's a 6-carbon aldehyde that exists in a linear form, a reactive form, at a 0.002% concentration, or rather a 0.02% concentration at physiological temperatures and pH. And it will covalently bind to proteins and derange them permanently, Zane. We are done.
It's a problem. It's not the original problem. It's not
No, well, yes, correct. The original problem is consuming the damn thing.
the root cause.
No, the root cause is eating a diet that is incongruous with what your genes evolved to genotypically withstand. That is how Darwinian principles of evolution work.
Problem, at least from a dietary standpoint. The dietary raising of blood sugar and going back down, that's not really the problem.
No, well, it is a problem in that it is not what we evolved to withstand in a high frequency, Zane. That is false. That implication is false. Wrong. We are not designed to spike our glucose and have it trough and spike and trough and spike and trough. What you want is if it is to spike because you make a poor decision dietarily, for it to trough very quickly. You want to see that if you are to spike your glucose. The question becomes, should you be spiking the glucose? And the answer is no.
The elevation of insulin isn't even really the problem.
Elevation to what amount at what frequency? It's not a problem if it's produced by the body. The problem was an externality that you've introduced that is incongruent, just to change the form a little bit, spice things up, with what? Your genes. Blah, 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 blah. Say it with me.
The problem starts much further upstream with a different set of hormones.
For fuck's sake. So actually there are bad hormones. There are horrible hormones, according to you, Zane. No. Watch him talk about cortisol. Watch him turn into a Rapedian fruit and honey guzzler.
Called stress hormones.
Ah, there it is. Oh boy, yes, we haven't heard about these before. Zane Griggs Fitness. There's no such thing as a stress hormone. Just because every single distressing event that someone experiences is associated with hormones like cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine does not mean that every instance in which cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine are present, that means that something distressing is occurring. Logic.
Specifically, cortisol, epinephrine.
Oh, there we go. Oh, wow. You would think that I've watched this video before. I haven't. Spoiler. It's so predictable. Cortisol, though. Epinephrine, though. First of all, epinephrine. Adrenaline. Seriously? Yes, all carnivores. They're experiencing lots of epinephrine activity and norepinephrine. Yes, that's good. That's good. Great. Granted, I think what he's actually going to talk about is not that carnivores are exhibiting that or whatever. He's probably going to say that people, that are experiencing these problems very well could be under high stress conditions, and you could be having problems as a result of that. That doesn't mean that carnivore is bad. I don't know. How does it even connect? That would mean that it's not even diet related, really. That would mean that it's lifestyle and mindset related. Go talk to Dr. Kiltz about your mindset.
Or adrenaline, it's called, and
yes.
Glucagon.
Oh, wow. We're getting way off the reservation here. Glucagon is a stress hormone? But first of all, we need to invoke the distinction between stress and distress. Okay? Stress is work. Our body is stressed right now because it's working. No stress means literal death. It means you're dead. You want to get rid of stress? Die. Distress implies counterproductivity. That's what you're getting at. An amount of work that is not being met by a commensurate gain. That's what you're talking about. Okay? Distress is a problem, externally caused. Okay? Glucagon is not distressing. Glucagon is a hormone. It has a role to play, and it is stimulated by certain behaviors. Okay? What is your evidence that it is distressing? So we do have bad hormones. We do have bad hormones, apparently. He wanted to imply that we didn't insulin. Oh, this pseudo fear, this fear monger around insulin being a bad hormone. It's ridiculous. It's nonsensical. But glucagon, though, the yang to the yin that is insulin, that's a problem. That's stressful. Zane Griggs, Zane, you would benefit from my carnivore course. Or rather, what? Carnivore course? Where'd that come from? My biochemistry course when it's out. I'll be sure to send you a link to it next year or so, whenever it comes out, because you could learn a lot from it.
And these are elevated.
Beyond what? What is the metric by which something is considered elevated is completely arbitrarily chosen based on levels that are collected by clinics from that have people that enter them that are sick. Because people that aren't sick don't go to the damn clinic, Zane.
Let's start with a low carb, no carb diet, right?
Low carb, no carb. Low carb, no carb.
So in a low or no carb diet where carbohydrates are not being taken in, that means
Yes.
there's really creates a sort of a glucose shortage.
No, it doesn't, Zane. Absolute nonsense. I thought you said you understood biochemistry. Insert. Nope.
Okay, so the body has to produce more glucose.
Right. And what hormones are involved in the production of glucose? Could one of them be cortisol? I wonder if that's the case. So what you're telling me, Zane, is that cortisol is not necessarily indicative of distress. It could be indicative of reducing your glucose consumption. Good. Thanks, Zane, for covering that.
Via a process called gluconeogenesis.
Right. That really damn horrible process, that real stressful process, you know, the very thing that allows us to not have a requirement for glucose exogenously. Of course, you know, I'm in a glucose shortage right now. So it's stressful on my body. That's why I'm not thinking clearly at all and haven't for years. I am 22 years old. Did you know that? I'm 22 years old. You know how long I've been carnivore? Since I was 18. 18 years old. Do you think that how many carbohydrates do you think I've had within the last 4 years? Because look, I was absolute zero carb for almost 2 years. And then what I did is I became stupid and I tried to test my luck during Christmas, and then I had a lot more and I stopped. I restricted it from then, but here and there I dabble, and I shouldn't do it. I'm not pretending like I should. I shouldn't do it. But I have remained under 50 grams of carbohydrates for 4 years. A day. Do you think does it look like I'm having problems, Zane? In the mental department? The mental intellect and sharpness department. I am a little erratic today. But for good reason. So anyway, Zane, no, it's not a glucose shortage, and gluconeogenesis, as you just referenced, is a process that allows the body to produce glucose from non-glucose precursors, such as primarily lactate recycling through the Cori cycle. Okay. Also, you've got the second to that would be amino acids postprandially, and then you've got odd-chain fatty acids through propionyl-CoA. Rare, but it can happen. And then glycerol backbones of fatty acids, whether it be through lipolysis, so you acquire the glucose through, or the glycerol through the breakdown of the triglycerides, fatty acids, glycerol. Fatty acids are carried by albumin and blood plasma, non-esterified fatty acids, or whether you're getting it from the diet. So what's the problem there? Tell us the problem with that.
For gluconeogenesis to take place, we have to start with elevated stress hormones.
No, what you have to have is elevations in concentrations of hormones, by the way. Zane, hormones, not stress hormones, but elevations, sure. You also don't, it's not just about that, it's the I to G ratio, actually. And if you understood basic 101 biochemistry, again, take my course, Zane. I almost called him Lane. We're not dealing with him. Not today. If you actually understood this, you would realize that what you're saying is absolute bunk bullshit nonsense. A bunch of hoopla. Okay? Ridiculous.
The cortisol, the glucagon,
No, mainly glucagon, actually. Cortisol, in studies that are even done, by the way, in the bullshit area, the siloed area of human nutrition science, which isn't really science in the first place, what you'll find is that the elevations in cortisol that is recorded, mean plus or minus SD, so high signal to noise ratio, by the way, in the measurement itself, is acute. It goes back down. Cortisol, if you understood biochemistry, is involved in the production of 3 primary gluconeogenic enzymes, those being phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, PEPCK, fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, and pyruvate carboxylase. So if you require more glucose to be produced through gluconeogenesis because you're not consuming the damn thing, because you shouldn't be, because you're a sensible human being, what you will find, Zane, is that you need more cortisol because you need more of the enzymes that catalyze the chemical reactions in the pathway.
epinephrine.
No, you actually don't need epinephrine, Zane. What the are you talking about?
Excuse me. And these stress hormones
By the way, if you're going to mention epinephrine, might as well mention norepinephrine too.
break down, if there's no immediate protein available, they will break down muscle protein.
No, they won't. Oh my God, Zane, you f***ing idiot. I'm sorry, Zane. I was respectful yesterday, and then I'm seeing this bullshit from you with you saying that you absolutely know 100%. Oh, when I looked into the biochemistry. Oh, did you look into the biochemistry, did you? Really? Because if you did, you'd understand that most of the glucose that you actually get is recycled from lactate because your red blood cells use glucose. In the people studied, it's been like up to 50%. After that, you're getting it from glycerol, and then postprandially, after you eat, in other words, you're getting it from protein, Zane. Then you'll get some from odd-chain fatty acids, but that's typically in a starvation episode, or if you eat a ton of fat. It's the extremes in either direction, actual starvation or surplus of food. Zane, learn some biochem.
If you've just eaten, they will use that protein.
Yes. And then if you're starving, it will use your muscle protein. Or, by the way, it seems, and it makes sense, if you're not used to eating a carnivorous diet or a low-carb diet, because you don't have the enzymes, your genes, your phenotype is not adapted to it. This is one of the reasons to undergo an adequate transition period, okay? I talk about this in chapter 7 of my book, Contrainidicated, a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. Okay, links in the description below. Once again, buy it. Okay, and this is one that I won't promote for 20 years and then start telling people to burn afterwards and start apologizing for what I said in it. Because it's actually based on fact. Okay? You don't have to worry about me rewriting this and saying, oh, well, you know, now after I had a spiritual awakening, I decided to dump glucose and syrup down my throat. You don't see that happening.
On some level, to offset the muscle protein.
Ridiculous. That's not what's going on, Zane. You're not offsetting muscle protein breakdown whenever you consume the protein and it turns into glucose. Because what happens afterwards is you just use fat. Well, not fat for production of glucose. Oops, that was my first slip. Caught it, though. What you're actually doing is you are using lactate from red blood cells and also recycled from muscle fibers because you actually do engage in anaerobic activity at all intensities. You will not be told that in exercise physiology. Not true. Another reason just to take my biochemistry course. Again, it'll be out way later, but I'm sowing the seeds for you so that you can anticipate that. If you're one of the 20 that has a spot, you're in the early access program helping me build it. Good job. Congratulations. I'll see you this Saturday. But anyway, you would understand that it's from lactate and glycerol backbones.
Break down muscle protein and take it to the liver and convert it into glucose.
Well, not just the liver, but yes, mainly hepatic gluconeogenesis is the primary source of endogenously produced glucose, but also the kidneys, the proximal convoluted tubules of the kidneys, parts of the small intestine, and believe it or not, parts of the brain.
Essentially, and so then the liver spits out more glucose.
Yes, good, as is indicated according to the circumstances in which those genes are placed.
Into the bloodstream because, again,
because, Zane, you're not consuming it.
If you're not eating it, it's got to come from somewhere. You're using it 24/7.
Yes, and some people are actually having it be used in their muscles for productive conversation, for productive activity, and not counterproductive activity. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Every second of the day in varying amounts.
Correct, Zane. Yes. It's the entire reason why I'm able to nod my head obnoxiously in front of you.
And the more active you are, the more you use.
Correct. Good thing you could still acquire all of it from gluconeogenesis. You'll just want to eat more. Isn't that crazy how that works?
So your body needs glucose, and so it has to produce it. It produces it by breaking down muscle. And
Right. Now tell me, Zane, what's the requirement for fructose, which is something you're also guzzling now and have been for the last 2 years. So it needs glucose. Now tell me what the requirement for fructose is.
turning it into glucose, or using some lactate if you're exercising.
Oh, so lactate. Yes. So if you're exercising or if you're not exercising. See, he doesn't even understand that. If you're not exercising, you're also using lactate from red blood cells, but also your muscle fibers, because glycogen is required for every muscle twitch of every single intensity. Shulman and Rothman, they proved it in a rattlesnake's rattle first, and then in human beings in a study called the glycogen shunt. Fact.
Use some of that lactate. And so it's a stressful situation.
No, it's stressful in the fact that it requires work. We already covered that. It's not a distressing situation though, and that's your implication. So your implication is false. Once again, we're going to keep covering it over and over and over again.
Because you have stress hormones elevated and you're breaking down tissue. That's a catabolic.
Or what if you're not breaking down tissue because you actually understand that that's not happening because you're an intelligent human being that understands biochemistry? Does that depend on phenotype? I think we covered that.
Response. It's catabolism.
It is catabolism, yes. The breaking down of larger molecules, complex molecules, into smaller ones for use. Notice how whenever you actually objectively define it, it doesn't seem so bad? Catabolism. He wants to talk about catabolism if it's like, oh, your body's melting away and it's crumbling before your eyes. Name me one animal that exists primarily in an anabolic state. Because do you understand that anabolic doesn't just mean building muscle, it also means storing and creating fat? Zane?
So in this catabolic response, we
tell me what catabolism means, Zane. Tell us all about catabolism.
have when you have stress hormones,
covered that.
Catabolic response.
Catabolic response. Tell us what that means.
Your body's not happy.
No. Okay. Fuck. So now we're anthropomorphizing the body as if it has a consciousness. No, the body just is. We have a consciousness. The body doesn't. The body is chemistry. It just does, according to Le Chatelier's principle, okay, according to chemical pressures, according to laws of physics. That's how things work. There's no happy or unhappy state, okay? You can't lift up your shirt or look in the mirror and see a frowny face that your body has sort of like put on the surface of your skin to signify, I'm not getting glucose, I need it. I want glucose. I mean, seriously? Happy. So now we're getting into theology. Good, always a good sign. When you can't rely on science, refer to theology.
It really isn't. It's not excited about that.
It's not excited. You hear that? It's not excited. Eat carbs to excite your body. Eat carbs to get your body happy. So again, more pseudo-scientific nonsense.
It's a survival mode.
Yes. Survival mode is 24/7. Survival mode is until you die, until you're not surviving, Zane. Okay?
And so in the full stream of it, even though you're putting out the glucose that you need for the moment, your body's like,
no, for all times. For all times until you starve to death.
This is not sustainable.
Oh, so the body said that. Can you cite the body saying that? First of all, the body, as if we all have the same body. Can you cite the body saying that, or are you just making shit up?
It's not sustainable because we're breaking down tissue.
But we're not, Zane, unless you're talking about fat tissue, in which case that's literally what you advocate for, isn't it? Fat loss, lipolysis, as it's biochemically known as. See, at the beginning you want to talk about biochemistry. Let's talk about biochemistry.
To make glucose.
To make glucose from protein that you've eaten and or fat that you've eaten and or broken down from your fat tissue because you're in a catabolic state. Zane, get a grip.
And so if you're breaking down, it knows you can't last very long.
What? Now he's going to get into this. This is just like, this is fundamentally false, Zane. For 20 years, you promoted low carb and carnivore, and something, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he had a gym accident. I don't know what the happened. I don't see any injuries on him, but I think something has happened. Something's happened to him. I pity the man. I pity the man. No, maybe what happened was a dip in his bank account. Maybe that's what happened.
Breaking down tissue indefinitely, right? All it knows is this is.
It doesn't know anything, Zane. You're making shit up. This is all theology. This is a way of beguiling people into your ideology that have no clue about metabolism. You used the word lactate and gluconeogenesis and epinephrine, so you're smart. You know more than them. That's what they're thinking. And you know what? It's not their fault. Everyone's been in those situations. But I know. I see through it. And I'm not going to let you do it. Not unscathed. Sorry.
This is not sustainable.
Yes, it is. I mean, I don't know. How about, what would you say 4 years of not consuming carbohydrates in really any significant amount, any to speak of? What would you say that is? Unsustainable? What's the cutoff for whether it's sustainable or not? 2 years, 4 years, 8 years of doing it? 20 years? It's absolute nonsense, Zane, what you're saying. You have no clue what you're talking about.
Right. So it wants to reduce its.
It doesn't want to do anything, Zane. You want to do something. The body isn't wanting to do anything. It's chemistry. It does according to chemical pressures and laws of physics. Something that I'm sure that you don't understand.
Need for energy.
Yes, you need glucose for energy. You don't need exogenous glucose for energy, or else it would actually be a nutrient. And it's not a nutrient at all. Definitionally, it is not a nutrient.
Makes sense, right? Like.
No, it doesn't make sense. What makes sense is that you would be saying this if your bank account dipped. Okay? I don't know. I have no idea. Who knows? But what I will say is, association doesn't equal causation. But an association that's pretty tough to ignore is the fact that as soon as you started talking about this more vocally, you've gotten more likes and engagement. How convenient. Just because the result of something is convenient doesn't mean that the actual motive was something that is designed to effectuate that result. I understand that. Okay? But it's tough to ignore. Theories can still be put forth.
Hey, if we got to break down the structure of the house to keep it warm.
Oh, so are you not a fan of breaking down fat now, Zane? Oh, that's new. That's very interesting. That's really interesting.
Do we want to, I don't know, maybe reduce our need for warmth?
Yeah, so more theology and more just inappropriate analogies, Zane. What the hell are you talking about? So Zane is saying, according to Zane's logic, you shouldn't break down fat. Because that's really what he's actually saying is, it'll break down muscle. But it breaks down fat. Fuck's sake, Zane.
Energy, not use it so much. So what it does, it starts lowering thyroid. It reduces.
No. This is complete this is ridiculous. The reason that your T3 level may go down, and typically does go down, is because what hormone is responsible for effectuating the production of T3? Is it insulin, Zane? What matters is whether or not the amount that's present is sufficient. It doesn't matter. Trying to reach thresholds is pointless, and in fact is actually breaking the Hippocratic Oath if the person doesn't present with symptoms. Understand the ethics of science.
The conversion of T4 to T3, which is.
Yes, exactly. It's the active form. See, I understand this shit.
Reduced energy production.
No, commensurate with the T3 reduction is a lower metabolic rate. Yes. However, what matters is the amount of T3 in the system, in the context of the system, and whether it's required, if it's sufficient, rather. We already covered it.
Which means a slower metabolism, less energy being produced.
Oh, goodness me, Zane. So basically now, according to Zane's logic, the higher rate of the faster the rate of metabolism, the better. Might as well get hyperthyroidism. Of course, what he would say is, I didn't say that, Eddie. What are you talking about? Of course, there's a cap as to how high you want thyroid. I never said otherwise. Well, if you admit that, then you must also admit that your little function that you've put forth, less metabolism, less T3, the worse, is necessarily by consequence also wrong. That's the point that I'm making.
Let's see, we got a question here. Why would the body default?
Why would you ask this person any questions whatsoever? Don't. If you are following Zane Griggs, I've been calling him Zane Giggs. Oops. If you're following him, unfollow him today. Because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
To muscle tissue when there's plenty of fat?
Oh, so someone actually is calling his shit out.
Fat can't be converted to glucose. It's a...
No way. No way. Are you out of your mind? Zane, you've lost all credibility. You've lost literally all credibility. If you hadn't lost it before, you've lost it now. Holy shit. This man said when you learn the biochemistry of things, learn lipolysis and learn gluconeogenesis. Glycerol, Zane, is the backbone of triglycerides, the stored form of fat, and they are used to create glucose. Also, odd-chain fatty acids themselves can be used. Holy shit. And he said that so confidently. Fat can't be used to create glucose. Wow, I'm learning today. I am learning. Trust me, I am learning. It's not what Zane thinks that he's teaching, though.
Good question. But fat is not converted to glucose.
Holy shit. Yes, it is, Zane. Come up on the channel and let's talk biochemistry, Zane. I'm not kidding. So you understand biochemistry, Zane? You understand biochemistry, you say? Right. Good. No, you don't.
You can use fat for energy.
Yes, and you can also use it to create glucose. Triglycerides themselves are broken down to glycerol and non-esterified fatty acids carried by albumin and blood plasma. Glycerol isn't carried by anything because it's actually water soluble. Physics and chemistry, though.
But it can only, at most, like even the brain, especially.
Oh, so now we're going to be talking about a study or a multitude of studies done on people with different phenotypes and genotypes. Good. That cannot therefore be used to, cannot be applied to anyone not studied. Because that's literally how science works.
Actually, which is glucose hog, like brain.
Oh my God. And yet, you can get up to, in studies have shown this, people have been observed to be able to acquire up to 80% of the energy demands in their brain by ketones alone. Do you actually know the requirement for glucose in the brain, like what cells require it? Because it's not neurons. Sorry. It's astrocytes, a type of glial cell, through glycogenolysis. That's it. And in fact, they do so to provide rapid energy in the form of lactate to adjacent neurons through a lactate shuttle. That is how the brain works. That is how it requires glucose. Every single requirement for glucose in the body is anaerobic. I did a video on this. It's called Carb Delusion Exposed, and it's in the top right corner of the screen, if you're so interested.
Loves glucose. Glucose is the primary fuel for the brain.
Oh my God, it's the primary fuel for the brain if you consume it, Zane. That's how that works. Again, phenotype and genotype. Glucose is your primary source of fuel if you consume it all the time. That's why in studies of people that consume carbohydrates, it suggests that glucose is your primary energy source. Now, do you understand why whenever you report science, you can't responsibly use the word "your" when you're reporting the results? You have to imply necessarily that the reporting is based on the people studied exclusively, not you. You weren't in the study. I wasn't in the study. Let's calm down.
And then you can supply that with some ketones, right?
Oh, some ketones. Yeah, you could supplement it with some ketones. You could supplement it with some ketones. No. Holy shit. I mean, this is worse than I thought.
In the best ketogenic diet, or when you're starving, not eating anything, the greatest percentage of energy that the brain can use from ketones is about 70%, and that's
Wow. Okay, so hold on. So between 70 and 80 is actually what I've seen. Wow. So basically what you're saying is that the brain can acquire the majority of its energy demands from ketones. Oh wow. That's amazing. That's interesting. Glucose hog, you say?
Ideal situation. Most people.
By the way, I'm logically consistent. It is still a glucose hog, even in the presence of that fact.
Won't even get there, especially if you got some insulin resistance going on. But
which you also probably don't understand at all. You've exemplified the fact that you don't understand physiology, so it would only look if the boot fits. If the boob tits.
Usually it's at best sometimes closer to 60, and the rest is glucose. Muscles.
Yes, we get it, Zane. But that also depends on phenotype in terms of the rate at which an organ system is going to sequester glucose.
Muscle cells, if you're lifting weights,
or if you're not lifting weights, you require glucose for literally every single muscle twitch, every blink that I do, every lip movement, every tongue movement, everything.
You are sprinting. If you're doing actually
if you're doing anything, yes.
I mean, even if you're just sitting around, it's usually right around a 50-50, 60-40.
In the people studied, Zane. Not to mention, the glucose being used in my muscle fibers right now is being used in muscle fibers that are also using fat for energy. They use both at the same time. Again, biochemistry course, muscle energetics though.
Fat to glucose usage. And then the more...
So what, Zane? Genesis.
Active or dynamic you get, the more glucose you use. But
great. And you know what else also happens? Your rate of glucose production at the level of the liver increases too. So what do you do, Zane?
Fat is not converted to glucose.
No, that is absolute nonsense. You are ignorant. You are ignorant, Zane. Let's cut the act for a minute. This is a shame. You have the ability to learn more, but this is unacceptable. I'm putting on a little cartoony, right? But seriously, in my normal way, Zane, you're probably a good guy, but this has got to stop. You cannot say these things unscathed. This is not acceptable. Not even in the slightest. You have no fundamental understanding of physiology, and you promoted a low-carb diet for 20 years, and then something happened. I have no idea. Now, for the last 2 years, you've been promoting the guzzling of fruit and honey. If you're going to make a case for carbohydrates, there's actually a few that they're not enough to get me to convert. I don't think they're substantial enough, but there's ones that are of way more substance than this. That is true. Way more substance. And this is not it. This is not it even in the slightest.
There is, in a fat molecule, there is a glycerol.
So you do know this. And no, not in a fat molecule, in a triglyceride molecule specifically.
Particle, if you will, particle.
Molecule.
Which
but yes,
can be broken down from that fat.
Not just can be, it is.
That's used as fat. Glycerol can be converted But of all the gluconeogenesis, the glucose usage,
Most of it's from lactate, actually, Zane.
glycerol makes up the smallest percentage of that. We're talking about
Really? So in the people studied, perhaps, for the duration of time that they were studied. In certain groups of people, by the way. Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Got to be careful to look out for that.
from single digits, like 2-3%, to maybe at most, if it's really cranking, 5%.
Right. So now look at people that are losing rapid amounts of fat and tell me that that's still the case. You think that value fluctuates up and down depending on phenotype? You think it fluctuates up and down even in the same genotype over the duration of observation? Statistics, though, science, though.
Ketones. Okay, but ketones for the brain is still only 60-70%.
No, it's about 70 to 80% in the study. But even if you're going to expand the interval range from between 60 to 80, that still means that a lot of the brain uses ketones. It's the majority of the brain, right there. And again, if you understand the actual requirement for glucose in the brain, you'd understand you do not need to consume the damn thing. Okay? Ketones. Yes, little pieces of fat, so to speak, that become water soluble, which is why they can actually just flow through the bloodstream. Fats themselves can't. Fatty acids. But anyway, yeah, so ketones. There you go. See, even your own followers understand this.
You can't use fat in the brain.
You can't use fat in the brain, correct. Well, actually, it's a very small amount that I've seen observed in certain people. Most fatty acids cannot permeate the blood-brain barrier. The only ones that actually have been observed to be able to, from my understanding, are ones that are the polyunsaturated, the omega-6s and the omega-3s, DHA and EPA, which shouldn't surprise you if you understand that DHA and EPA constitute a large part of the brain. So it's actually not for oxidative purposes and energy production purposes, but rather it's for structure, which makes sense. So most of it it doesn't use fat for energy. It uses ketones for energy and also glucose through glycogenolysis or glucose through pyruvate oxidation in cases where someone is consuming lots of glucose. Absolutely, yes.
So, and many people don't realize that you can't use fats, you use ketones for...
Many people don't realize a lot of things, Zane. So anyway, people can't use fat for keto. What are you saying?
And then in order to spare the need for that glucose, because you're trying to pump it out and you're making muscle, in addition to lowering thyroid, the body will create a certain level of insulin resistance in muscles.
No, this is absolute nonsense. So you also don't understand insulin resistance. You have no clue what you're talking about when it comes to insulin resistance. Now you're going to be talking about peripheral insulin resistance. You're talking about the Randle cycle, whether you realize it or not. You're talking about a phenotype that has a downregulation that involves a downregulation of GLUT4 transporters, that involves a downregulation of all GLUT transporters, potentially, but mainly GLUT4. And you're talking about a Randle cycle situation. Those are the causes of this peripheral insulin resistance that you talk about. This is the consequence of believing that insulin resistance is a pathology. It isn't.
Well, so the muscles and the other tissues will actually block glucose to spare it for the brain, because the brain and heart...
No, that is a theory that is put forth that is absolute nonsense. Because if that were the case, then why is it the case that whenever you spike the glucose and then it holds for a minute, it comes right back down? Or if it doesn't hold at all and just comes directly back down, because the myth is that if you're in a physiologically insulin resistant state, you've necessarily, a carnivore diet causes that, or a low carbohydrate diet causes that. Except I'm about to have a conversation with Coach Stephen Thomas again tomorrow, wherein he's actually said in the past, in another video that we did with each other, that people in his practice don't have this problem. They don't have this problem at all. They've been zero carb for a very long time, and he goes, okay, let's test your glucose sensitivity. Have a Mars bar. They eat one, spikes the glucose, comes right back down. No holding. So how many people does it actually, there's no empirics to inform upon how many carnivores or people that are reporting to be consuming a carnivore diet or a zero carb diet actually exhibit this phenomenon. And in the people that are reported to have been exhibiting this phenomenon, it goes away within like 2 days after reintroduction of carbohydrates. So what the hell is the point? There's no indication for metabolic flexibility in that respect. What that shows is that your tolerance for something goes down when you don't consume it. That doesn't mean to reintroduce it. That means to keep it out of the diet.
Come first. right? So a lot of muscles don't have as much glycogen in them when you're on this kind of diet.
Oh my God, Zane. So now Zane doesn't even understand that your glycogen stores are not dependent on the diet you consume, but the training status of the individual. Oh my. Zane, you will fill your glycogen stores after you eat, yes, but that works irrespective of the carbohydrate content in the meal. Zane, the amount of glycogen you can store in muscles is not dependent on your diet, it's dependent on your training status. Fact.
It limits performance, and there's a reason.
No, it doesn't. You are lying. You are misled, actually. You're not lying. You're being misled, and you're misleading other people. This is absolute, utter nonsense, Zane. You do not know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
For that, the type 2 muscle fibers, which...
Oh, no. Now Zane is going to sit here and pretend like type 2 and type 1 are mutually exclusive. Well, what he's going to say, type 2 muscle fibers and type 1, any type of muscle fiber, does not exist based on the diet you eat. It's based on what exercise you engage in. Zane.
are used for strength, speed, power.
Yes, so you can actually change type 1 to type 2 depending on your training status and the exercise that you employ onto the muscle, or rather that you impose onto the muscle, correct? Yes?
And growth are glycolytic.
They're glycolytic in the fact that they expend all of their glycogen per muscle fiber per twitch within 10 milliseconds, as opposed to around 40. Yes, correct.
Very little mitochondria in them. They primarily use glucose.
Yes, through glycogenolysis. They still have mitochondria in them, by the way, which means they are still oxidizing fat and ketones in a ketogenic state to some extent, with no problems.
If you don't have enough glucose or glycogen on hand, you will actually not use some muscle fibers. It's called...
Yes, absolutely. Now, explain to us, Zane. Let's put it this way. I have a really good angle for this. Historically, when we exercised through high intensity training, what were we doing? Were we just doing it for the hell of it? Nope. We were hunting. What does that mean? Does that mean we were in a fasted state? Last I checked, historically, whenever we were hunting, it wasn't directly after we consumed an animal. That was when we were resting, which is why we call it rest and digest. So let me get this straight. These models that have been made, these sculptures that have been made of really, really fit, like Greeks, from even just like a few thousand years ago, a few millennia ago. You're telling me, go back 20,000 years ago, you're telling me that those people developed those physiques, which they're definitely exhibiting some type 2 muscle fibers, okay? They developed those physiques because when they exercised, they were eating lots of carbohydrates. And then they would exercise. Their performance was low whenever they were fasting and hunting with those muscle fibers. That's what you're telling me? No, Zane. That's not true. You will not convince me otherwise, because it's not true.
Excitation, contraction, coupling failure, which basically means the muscle cells will fail.
No, okay, so a bunch of theology and a bunch of really reductionism, actually, because at the end of the day, in order for, I understand muscle energetics very thoroughly. Glycogenolysis is required for every single muscle twitch, and yes, in the muscle fibers that you're referring to, there is less mitochondria in them because they depend more on glycogen, and they use that glycogen up faster than slow twitch muscle fibers do. Okay, but for every single muscle fiber twitch of all intensities, all of the glycogen in the muscle fibers recruited for that lift are completely expended to produce massive amounts of ATP in very small amounts of time to cause the myofilaments to contract at the cross bridge formation. Okay, those muscle fibers cannot twitch again until they are fully replete with glycogen. The energy required for the glycogen resynthesis being supplied by phosphocreatine, actually, that is carrying energy produced through oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria. I have now just explained all 3 gears of muscle energetics to you. Well, there's really 4, but that's not relevant here. Take my biochemistry course to learn all about it. Then whenever it's filled up again, the muscle fiber can contract again. If you need to recruit more muscle fibers during that transient period where the glycogen needs to be recruited, other muscle fibers will take its place, will fill its place, and will also flex. Why do you think different muscle fibers are being contracted at different points during an exercise or a lift? You can actually see it happen whenever you keep a weight up here. And the reason why eventually you still get fatigued is because the rate at which the glucose can actually replenish the tissues, the muscle fibers, starts to not meet the demand for energy to keep that weight up. Also, which is why muscle fatigue during a lift, that pain that you feel, isn't even really a physical sensation per se. It is a signal sent from the brain to the muscles through, efferent and afferent communication. However, it is directly coupled to lowering of blood glucose gradually throughout the lift. Slightly, like lowering below baseline, but then it comes right back up afterwards. So it's slight, but it happens. That's why. Cool, huh? So before people say, but that might lead people to believe, well, so that means that the rate of glucose formation matters. That will influence the rate of failure. So if you're depending on gluconeogenesis, it's slower. Until you're phenotypically adapted to a carnivorous diet, to which case it's super fast. So anyway, why did I go on that spiel? Because what is the evidence? What is the evidence to suggest that low carbohydrate athletes have problems when it comes to high intensity training compared to high carbohydrate athletes? And if there is any evidence that suggests that, I would like to know the adaptation period that they went through, what type of low carbohydrate diet they're consuming. And also, you have to understand that there is still going to be a distinction between genotype and phenotype in terms of the maximum rate of an exercise that someone can engage in. People are going to be genetically gifted. Okay? You can't inform upon this as easily as you want to, or as you think you can, Zane. It's ridiculous what you're saying.
Or not fire, because
they won't fire.
Not enough glucose on hand. The body knows it and doesn't want to use it up.
So does this depend on phenotype and genotype? Zane? There are multiple confounding variables you're not considering here. So,
back to little bunny trail there. Back to the glucose issue.
Oh my God, it's not an issue, Zane. It's not a issue. You've made it a fake issue. That's what you've done here today, Zane.
So as gluconeogenesis starts getting into gear, right, and you have a little...
No, it's always in gear, by the way, Zane, so you don't even understand that. It's always in gear, even if you're eating carbohydrates regularly. Did you know that? You're producing glucose all the time. The rate at which you produce is going to be lower or higher depending on what you're eating and how frequently you're eating, too. Doesn't mean you don't produce it. You're producing it at all times. That should give you a hint about something, by the way. You're producing it even in a high carbohydrate fed state? Yeah, you are. Makes you wonder what we're actually evolved to do.
A bit of what we call physiological insulin resistance. So it's not...
Oh, so here we go. Great. So physiological. And he's about to say, well, so it's not pathological. The pathological insulin resistance isn't pathological either, Zane. It's exactly what the body is supposed to do given the circumstances. You don't even understand that.
Pathological in that you've technically...
Technically, because it's still a really bad thing. You don't want to be physiologically insulin resistant. Myth number 11. Physiological insulin resistance. This perhaps sounds a bit misleading, as physiological insulin resistance as a concept is a real phenomenon and not a myth. However, the argument typically associated with this phenomenon is the real myth, and that is that if you abstain from consuming carbohydrates, your body will not be able to withstand them as well, therefore reducing your metabolic flexibility, which is a bad thing. Well, they get one thing right. The claim that abstaining from carbohydrates reduces your ability over time to metabolize them as well if one were to introduce them back into their diets again is true. This is due to a few factors. The first factor actually has to do with the Randle cycle once again. We covered in the beginning of chapter 2 that the mitochondria will oxidize either one substrate or the other, but not both simultaneously except under very certain conditions. This is seen in individuals that consume a low to no carbohydrate diet for significant periods of time, where they exhibit abnormally extended presentations of hyperglycemia associated with hyperinsulinemia following the consumption of carbohydrates, indicating that their cells are not as proficiently utilizing the glucose for oxidative purposes as someone else would that consumes carbohydrates regularly. The second reason has to do with the body reducing its production of GLUT4 transporters within the cells, therefore resulting in a limited ability of the cells to metabolize glucose as proficiently than a regular carbohydrate consumer has, even in the presence of hyperinsulinemia. As a result of this, one's blood glucose will spike much higher, and de novo lipogenesis will be initiated to a much greater degree, and one stores more fat and suffers more acute inflammation. This is true. There's a very simple rebuttal to this, however, and that is that this is your body doing exactly what it's supposed to do. I'm not reading the rest. You want to read the rest? Buy the book. So as you can see, I already know this argument. I knew it whenever I was 18 damn years old. Trite.
In that you've got a disease state, but would you have...
Oh my God. A disease state. You may have a disease state present alongside pathological insulin resistance, absolutely. But what is the disease, Zane? You want to tell me? You want to tell your audience? Is it the glycation? Is it the chronically elevated blood glucose? Is it the diabetes? In fact, it is, actually. So there you go.
Was the adaptation state, which is then certain tissues are going to reject the blood glucose, the blood sugar.
Okay, again, reject implies sort of anthropomorphizing the body. It's a chemical pressure. It's a chemical back pressure exerted, and also an absence of a current chemical pressure that would cause it to that would influence the entry of that glucose or the administration of that glucose in. And it happens in certain people. Yes, correct. He's going to say that it happens to all carnivores. That's good. That's always responsible and mature.
The brain is hungry for it, so it keeps pumping out gluconeogenesis from the liver and kidney are ramping up in high gear, and this becomes your adaptation. And so what happens over time is your blood sugar starts to rise.
Okay, and what is the average blood glucose reading in a population of people reporting to be consuming a carnivore diet bereft of any carbohydrates to speak of? And also, is that blood glucose reading necessarily indicative of a problem if it's of a certain level, if it's above a certain baseline level, if there's not a bunch of spiking? Zane, answer those questions. Answer them.
Because some of your body is sparing it, doesn't want to use it. And
there's no want or desire in the body. No, false.
And the gluconeogenesis becomes your primary function. So the stress hormones keep going up.
No, they don't keep going up. Cortisol actually, in these studies that people often cite, goes down afterwards. And if they don't, sometimes those studies have only gone on for 2 weeks. And even, you know what? Even if they went on for 5 years and they don't go down, does that necessarily indicate a problem, Zane? Or does that just mean that you're depending on a lot of endogenously produced glucose? This is what happens when you slap labels on hormones as if you understand the body better than it understands itself. This is what happens. Because now you've applied negative connotations to cortisol that necessarily mean that anytime someone hears cortisol, in any circumstance, cortisol's bad. Cortisol's bad. No, Zane. Cortisol is actually never bad. It's a hormone. It has a function, a purpose. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's produced by the body according to the activity of the genes, according to the circumstances in which they're placed, according to the environment in which they're placed.
And you keep pumping out more gluconeogenesis.
Pumping out more glucose.
More blood sugar.
Correct. No, sugar, which contributes to blood sugar.
Okay. And so, regardless of the source, but considering a lot of people who eat this way also fast, often they might only eat in an 8-hour window.
I see. Yes, correct.
Most of their time is spent breaking down lean mass for this.
No, it's not. That's false. You don't understand physiology. You have nothing to back that claim up at all. You don't understand the distinction between phenotype and genotype. You don't understand the actual extrapolative power of science, of statistics, actually. If you actually understood statistics, even basic statistics, you'd actually, and you're a responsible scientist, you'd understand that what you just said was completely irresponsible to say. Most people, really? Were most people studied? And don't give me, if you're a critic, and you're watching, do not give me the whole, well, confidence interval, central limit theorem, confidence level, t-distribution, standard error. No. That's inferential statistics, which is, it is very, very, very seldom appropriate to invoke. You'll never be taught that. You can invoke that whenever your case variables are subject to the same confounders that exhibit the same activity across time and are identical in characteristics. Yeah, no one ever told you that. No one ever told you that. But yeah, inferential statistics is completely inappropriate to apply to human beings. Not so. Anytime you see a confidence interval, a confidence level, and some values that precede that, throw it in the trash. Standard errors, throw them in the trash. Standard deviations, bring them on. Come on. Let's observe your signal to noise ratios on this vapid science with no statistical power because of poor sample size. Go show me that signal to noise ratio on studies like this. Show me a study where the noise doesn't swamp the signal.
Comes from, again, muscle, skin, and bone. It needs amino
Oh my God. Wow.
acids. Right? And then lactate, again, can kick in when you're...
Oh yeah, but lactate can kick in whenever you're exercising or whenever you're just not exercising, because if you understood red blood cell chemistry, you'd understand that literally, I've seen 50% of glucose demands are met by lactate that is recycled.
You're exercising, you get some lactate off you.
No, or if you're not exercising at all because of red blood cells, and also because of glycogen being required for every single muscle fiber twitch of all intensities, Zane.
So that starts bringing blood glucose up because some tissues are sparing it.
It can, yes. That's a very, 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 very good theory, Zane. In fact, I would tend to agree with that. Now tell me why that's a problem, necessarily. What is the incidence of heart disease development in carnivores? Do you have any empirics on that? Because if you don't, it doesn't mean appeal to ignorance fallacy. You don't want to make that fallacy, that just because there's no evidence, that means it's not true, never will be true, and never has been true. That's the fallacy. But what it does mean is you have no evidence to support that claim, and that's your silly little theory based on an N of 2.
Not using it. Gluconeogenesis kicking up. Stress hormones are going up.
Not stress hormones. Gluconeogenesis going up? Who cares?
And what we see quite often...
Really, quite often. Who's we, by the way, Zane? Who's we? What we see quite often? Really? That's interesting. That's quite arrogant of you. Because I wasn't part of this. I'm not understanding what you're talking about here. Okay? What we see quite often.
What I experienced was blood sugar in the 90s.
Who cares?
Which is higher than normal.
Higher than normal? Great. So what's normal? Look around you at what normal is. Tell me if you want to meet that standard.
And then we see many these people talking about now.
Define many. What's the proportion of the people compared to all of the carnivores in the world that are eating a carnivorous diet? Tell me the answer to that, Zane.
And posting their blood work.
Posting their blood work. Okay, so that puts into question the integrity of the blood work. Does that necessarily implicate anything? Does that indicate anything necessarily? Were these people symptomatic, or were they presenting with any identifiable disease process, Zane? Can you answer that question for me?
Their blood sugar's in the hundreds, or 110, or 120.
That could very well be indicative of a problem. Absolutely. So now you need to discuss with them what they are doing, what they are not doing, and all of the above. Okay? What you're doing is being reductionist. You're believing that the world is linear. X goes to Y goes to Z. No, the world is a nexus. Okay? Think of a spider web, and every single intersection of the spider web is a variable, and every single line is bidirectional in terms of like cause and effect. Yeah, that's Earth. That's the world. Okay? You are thinking about things linearly because you are a human, and therefore what you do is you like to construct stories, and you believe that if a story makes sense, no matter how hard you had to work to even construct it, which is sort of sometimes a sign that you're actually pseudo-sophisticating something, no matter how hard you decided to work on it, if it makes sense to you, then it must be true. Because, of course, if a story is true, then it should make sense. But that doesn't mean the reverse is not always the case. If a story makes sense, then it must be true. Nope. You are engaging in theology that makes sense to you. That's great. Posit theories. That is a sign of a functioning, active mind, rather. Active. Let's say active mind. And an active mind is better than an inactive mind, arguably. But it doesn't mean you're right.
I've talked to several people who are on keto.
Define several. On keto. Yeah, on keto. So is carnivore's keto, but is all keto carnivore? Were these keto people that you're talking about eating a lot of sweeteners? Overeating food, therefore, because they're eating a lot of sweeteners? Riddle me that.
Keto or carnivore diets. Or they post it voluntarily. And I'm not criticizing them because, again, I went through this in the 90s, with the 90, 93, 96.
So what?
Blood sugar. But I want to address the problem so people understand it. And if they're...
It's not a problem. You're saying it's a problem. Okay? It's not necessarily a problem. It could be a problem in certain people. Okay? In which case, it's important to take them seriously, listen to their grievances, and approach it with care. Okay? And not be dogmatic. Because let me tell you something. If you think that my rhetoric today is dogmatic, you don't understand that truth isn't dogmatic. Acknowledging the truth is not dogmatic. It's not dogmatic to say the lion is a carnivore and that that's their appropriate diet, okay? Just because it doesn't allow for infinite amounts of variation, okay? We don't sit here and say that we should moderate adultery or else we're dogmatic. That's silly. That's stupid. You moderate certain behaviors, yes, sure, but you also restrict them and you discourage them. That doesn't make you dogmatic. That makes you principled and virtuous, okay? We need to understand that. You need to understand that, Zane, because I understand it. You understand it because you're smart. You're watching this video. You made it this far.
Dealing with it themselves, they understand why it's happening. If your blood sugar is going up that much,
well, in order to understand what's happening, don't listen to Zane. Listen to me.
That will cause a problem because it's going to be chronically high. If it's chronically in a fasted state, over 100, 105, 110.
That could very well be a problem, Zane. It also could not be a problem, technically. I mean, I sort of cringe at that. I do. I'm not going to lie. Over 100? Maybe. Maybe some issues there. Maybe. You talk about 110, 120? Okay, yeah, I'd start looking at things, sure. But I would primarily look at reticulocyte production rate. Well, I'd look at fructosamine assay. That's what I'd look at.
120? You're
120, yeah, that very well could be a problem. Now tell me how many people are actually exhibiting a level that high on carnivore. Zane, seriously, riddle me that.
You have a problem.
No, not necessarily. Again, though, in 120, okay, I'll let him have it. I'll let him have that. Fine. I'm forgetting where we are at this point.
That's chronic elevated blood sugar. And that's why
Elevated according to whom, on the basis of what? Zane? So what, now you trust the mainstream medical institutions? Everything they say? I'm not saying to distrust everything they say, but I'm saying question. You don't just take things with grains of salt. Okay?
Time you start seeing the A1C go up because
the A1C, no, that's ambiguous, Zane. We already covered the A1C situation earlier. Fructosamine assay, fasting blood glucose level, reticulocyte production rate, then HbA1c on top of that. Okay, there you go.
A1C is a picture of a 3 months impact of sugar.
2 to 4. Not sugar, by the way. Glucose specifically doesn't pick up on fructose. Doesn't pick up on anything else.
On the red blood cells.
Yes, it's an average reading. So now tell me, what can affect an average? Okay? This is why standard deviations are listed alongside averages. You want to talk about statistics again, you talk about standard deviations. Variance. A standard deviation in a random variable is the average distance around the mean that your data points lie. It is the dispersion of your data. Okay? You can have the same average in 2 different sets of people, 25, let's say, of whatever unit you want to talk about, average sugar intake or something per day. 25 grams, really? No, that would be like 250 or something. 25, okay, grams. Then, okay, that's one thing. Okay, they both have the same averages. Okay, yeah, sure. But the other group, if you put the standard deviations alongside it, paints a different picture. One group 1, could have 25 plus or minus 2. Very minimal variation. They're pretty much having the exact same amount of sugar all across the group. Reported sugar intake, of course. The other group could be 25 plus or minus 25. So all the way from 0 grams of sugar a day to 50. Well, that paints a different picture then, doesn't it? So whenever you're talking about an average glucose reading, so HbA1c, glycation rate, well, what do you need to report alongside an average? A standard deviation. You know what else you need to consider? The normality of the distribution. Is it approximately normal? Because if it's not, don't use a mean, use a median, plus or minus the median average deviation. This is statistics.
So over time, they are chronically being exposed to elevated blood sugar. So the A1C goes up 5.9, 6, 6.1, 6.
Really? So how many people are actually exhibiting HbA1cs that high on carnivore, Zane? So give some empirics.
0.2.
Again, to invoke logic, we don't want to appeal to ignorance, but it does mean, well, the positive claim that you're making is on you to support. So if you don't have the claim, it's a theory. which means you could or could not be right. You may or may not be right, rather.
Because it goes up. It stays up, stays high. And when they do eat, they eat, whether it's meat or not, meat and veggies, meat, it's still going to go up a little bit. So they're
Well, actually, I did a video a ways back that actually said that look, I predicted this was going to happen. And then I did a video recently, or more recently compared to the videos I'm thinking of, that actually just proved many people, include Coach Stephen Thomas. He was the one that actually got me to do the video. Or, well, he didn't tell me to do the video. I did it on my own accord and on my own volition, but it was based on his little case study that he did on himself, where he showed that actually he goes into deeper ketosis after he eats. So actually your blood glucose may go down after you eat. But yes, most commonly what I see is, and what I hear about is the glucose goes up. So what?
uptick is maybe lower, but it doesn't come down very far. Because
Right, so now tell me, does their blood glucose reach 130, 140 milligrams per deciliter? Do they spike their glucose? How often are they spiking their glucose? Okay, this matters.
it never gets below that 110 or the 115, or it's up in that range enough to impact their blood sugar. Again, the body's saying,
The body's not saying anything. You're saying something, Zane. You're about to say some more bullshit. There's some more excrement about to come out of your mouth.
we can't keep this up.
Yes, it can, and it does. It's done so for me for 4 years. It's done so for others for 20. It did so for you for 20.
Energy needs are too high.
Energy needs are too high. What the hell are you talking about? They're subserved by the food you eat, Zane. Nonsense.
Let's lower thyroid.
Let's lower no, it's not saying that. It's all chemistry. You're just lowering your insulin. And as a consequence, you're getting less rate of conversion of T4 to T3. That's supposed to happen.
So we have a slower metabolism.
Slower does not necessarily mean absolutely slow and inadequate in terms of the rate of function, Zane. Who's to say that you need a super high one? This gets into Rapedian theology, where you should measure your body temperature and make sure it's a certain level to make sure your metabolic rate is a certain level. So you make sure that you're not suffering from low metabolism. Unbelievable.
We have less energy being consumed.
No, you're not. First of all, you're having zero energy consumed, which means you can't consume less than zero. So it's just the same. You're consuming no energy. You're consuming mass, which actually is a very important distinction when you start talking about this pseudo oversimplified model of energy balance or of weight gain and weight loss, which is the energy balance model of calories in, calories out. Reductionist and also the wrong metric. Okay? Yes, they're interconvertible the same way a dollar and a euro are. However, you cannot take a euro to an American bank and expect to be able to use it. Which means it's noisy as a unit and needs to stop being used.
So you may be a little more lethargic when you're not exercising.
Maybe, and you also may not be at all. See how that works?
Hair starts thinning.
Hair starts thinning, right? So yeah. So basically, everyone goes bald on carnivore. Yep. Look at me. That's actually, you see how my hair is shorter today? It's all because carnivore. Overnight, just lost all my hair. That's how that works. Unbelievable, Zane.
Hormones get dysregulated when you have low.
According to whom, on the basis of what? Dysregulated? No, they're regulated. According to what the circumstances, according to the genes and the circumstances in which they're placed.
Thyroid, that eventually leads to low testosterone for women.
Not necessarily. What you're talking about is a lowering of it, not an inadequate amount, necessarily. Covered that too.
It can lead to, as we hear from many of them, dysregulated periods, right? So.
Yes, you can have that happen whenever you're malnourished, Zane.
Oh, menses is thrown off because of dysregulated sex hormones there. And this is...
In your opinion?
Also, what's funny, not funny, but coincidentally also seen in people who are insulin resistant, people who have type 2 diabetes.
Oh my God, so here we go with more theology. I think we're done. I really think we're done. I think we've covered Zane long enough. It's been an hour and a half, and he's just going to go on and on and on about stuff that he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand this, okay? I'm sick and tired of this. I really am sick and tired of this. Zane Griggs, you do not know what you're talking about. Stop speaking about this today, okay? If you want to start encouraging a different diet that deviates away from carnivore, All power to you. That's fine. Don't sit here and start pretending like it's based in any science that you understand. Admit that it's based in theory and nothing else. It is your theory. It is your opinion based on what you've seen. Then I wouldn't have a problem with you. Seriously. But now, what we've got going on is a group of people, a very small group of people, I think, that are sitting here telling you, well, some people are having dysregulated periods, or some people are having low metabolism or low metabolic rate. That's really what it all comes down to. His major claim is low metabolic rate, low metabolic rate, low metabolic rate. Okay? Which means it's insulin. You're not eating enough food. You're not eating enough food. Okay? It's either dysregulated, it's either low thyroid, so low metabolic rate, and or malnutrition. What is the common denominator there? What do you think it is? You think it's underconsumption of food? You're not getting enough nutrition, and also you're not getting enough food to stimulate a sufficient insulin response. Maybe you're splitting up your meals you're eating too little but too frequently instead of eating in one big meal. Maybe that's a problem. Okay? This is a bunch of nonsense from people that don't understand science, statistical inference, and biochemistry. This is what we have going on right now. This is an epidemic. I'm telling you, this is an urgent matter because these people are extremely influential and they're going to be scaring people away from carnivore and telling them that they need to dump hundreds. We're not even talking about introducing 50 grams or 20 grams into their diet. We're talking about people telling you to introduce hundreds of grams of carbohydrates into your diet in the forms of fruit, honey, maple syrup, white rice, sweet potato, regular potato, whatever it may be. Okay? And not only that, stuff that's completely irrelevant to what they're talking about. Eat vegetables now. Just eat lots of vegetables. These people they don't understand what they're talking about. They have no idea. None. Okay? I don't care about the intentions. Well, I do care. I care about the intentions. But road to hell, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. Okay? Okay. All right. That was fun, wasn't it? That was a ride. If you enjoyed the video, I'm sure you did, leave a like. Subscribe to me if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed yet, not sure what you're doing, now's your time. Now's your time. Okay? Or else maybe you will end up with poor metabolism. Who knows? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Buy my book, Contrainidicated, to learn more actual science and actual fact and logical reasoning. Again, if you haven't already, a closer look and revision of mainstream health axioms that have perpetuated illness, disorder, and disease for over a century. And also, finally, as you may have noticed, there are a lot of morons online. A lot of them. A lot of those morons like to call themselves coaches. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't know that in order to legally call yourself a coach, the requirements are, there's only one, and that is to call yourself a coach. Did you know that? Yeah, I bet you didn't. Yeah, so these people that call themselves coaches, they run around, call themselves coaches, I'm a coach, I'm a nutrition and fitness coach. They oftentimes have just called themselves that because they've decided to. Now, that seems a little disheartening, doesn't it? It seems a little daunting. So you basically have a whole party of coaches that don't know what they're talking about, telling people with authority to do a certain thing that is completely incongruous with what we were designed to do. Okay? So what that does is it puts a pressure on us to increase the supply, but not just with any, not just with any type of coach, not with just any person that can call themselves a coach. Okay? We want to be more principled than that. We want to be more ethical. We want to be superior to them ethically. And so fortunately for you, I have an ability for you to actually do this in a way that is responsible and gets you internationally accredited and certified through two major institutions, the National Academy of Sports Medicine and the Athletics and Fitness Association of America. Actually, many more, but those are the two ones that I like to mention myself. As an internationally accredited nutrition and fitness coach, by the way, with a program headed by Carnivore Coach Peter, linked in the description below in terms of how to get a hold of Carnivore Coach Peter as well as our website. But Carnivore Coach Peter is someone who has coached clients for over 20 years, so he definitely knows what he's talking about, but he has decided to take a break to coach coaches like you can become. And as a result of that, I have been recruited, as well as many other specialists in the field that actually do know what they're talking about and have respect for nuance and objective reality and are actually humble when it comes to scientific investigation and the pursuit of truth, which shouldn't be, those really aren't separate things, are they? such as yours truly. I have multiple modules talking about the Randall cycle, cholesterol, saturated fat, and heart disease, vitamin C metabolism, ketones, gluconeogenesis, uncoupled versus coupled mitochondria, exogenous carbohydrates implications in exercise and performance, and whether or not you should ever, in a client, have them reintroduce carbohydrates back into their diet. Because believe it or not, I'm actually not dogmatic, and I seek nuance, and I appreciate nuance and respect it and enjoy it. And so I do entertain these. I do not perfunctorily dismiss these things. I contend with them, and I approach the truth, or I arrive at the truth or my conclusions through the pursuit of truth. So if you want to learn more about that program, again, refer to the website below, schedule a free call with Coach Peter through the links in the description below, and or refer to an interview that I did with Peter a little ways back now, so that you can learn actually how he arrived at carnivore, what his journey was like beforehand, and a little bit more about the program, because of course, obviously you should learn about it first before, embarking upon the journey of taking it. So with that being said, join me next time when we're reacting to more ignorance. Absolute ignorance, even if it is guided with humility. But at the end of the day, there's a reason that I was talking the way that I did, the way that I was, because I don't really think it was humble. Okay, so till then,